Megan, welcome to the Creation for Liberation podcast.
Thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be a part of this.
Me too. Megan, what does dance mean to you? And I'll just share, I'm asking this question from someone who has danced, putting it in quotes, like danced formally in my life and in my adulthood, has had to reclaim what it means to me in my body outside of certain genres of dance or choreography of dance, what my body wants to and how it wants to move. So I'm curious, given what I've learned about you from your website, your mission, which we'll share more about shortly, what does dance mean to you?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Dance is such a huge part of my life, and it always has been a very important part of who I am and how I identify myself and how I explore in the world, and just like awareness of my body in space and how it's connecting with the environment around me. I started dancing at a very young age of 3, various dance forms, and just love moving my body and creating with my body and expressing via the body, and also how that allows me to relate to other people and collaborate with community and share space with people. Dance for me is a way that I'm also able to express who I am as an individual and also really share my strength. I feel like as a young petite Asian person that there's been a lot of like, oh, you're so cute and small, and assumptions about how I might be based off of the way I look. And with my current dance practice, or for the past decade or so, like really being able to tap into my strength and my ability to lift myself up and to lift others up and have people be like, oh wow, like you really surpassed my expectations of what is possible. Also at the same time being able to share some of what I've learned over the years with other people who might not know what they are capable of doing, and giving them tools to like really explore their inner strength and their ability to listen to their bodies and to listen to other bodies in space, and be able to connect and be able to move other people and get to mechanics and use momentum and use physics to lift people or be lifted. Like that's been really empowering to like see those aha moments, like when I'm teaching or when I'm in rehearsal, and maybe we're exploring some new devices within a creative process, like having those moments of exploration and giving tools to folks to discover what's possible within their own bodies via those explorations is really really rewarding and really empowering for myself. And then being able in my productions and the performances that I create collaboratively with other artists, being able to share that with audiences and also kind of shift their perspectives of what's possible in space, or how to interact with the environment around them, or hopefully subvert some preconceptions about what people, or what certain the way people look and what they should be able to do and what they shouldn't be able to do, and like know that there's like this kind of bust down some walls and be like, actually there are all these possibilities of how people can be in the world and what they can accomplish physically or emotionally or communication wise. I feel like dance for me is such an amazing tool to ask those questions and tap into some questions and some problems and try to solve them in like interesting ways, and share what we've learned through class or through productions, and hopefully get people to kind of think about things a little differently.
Just the way you described it feels like you're seeing it as such a as a form of disruption And that's
Mhm.
what I was hoping to hear more about, because a lot of times when I'm facilitator, and even when I'm looking at dance and what that means to me, there is a very rigid way of what it's commonly looked at, and that's
Mhm.
within performance or within production or within a certain body type or what have you. Though, as I mentioned, my reclamation of dance has been just how my body wants to move, and I'm really hearing how you look at dance as, yes, as a way to relate to yourself in space, to relate to other bodies, which seems like so much more than what I've been trained to look at dance as, and what I think a lot of people have been trained to look at dance as within a specific and somewhat oppressive context. I
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm really relating to everything you just said. In my processes, in my classes, and in my rehearsal processes, yes, I have information to share and things, particularly things that I enjoy as a creator that I love to pass on and ask and excite people about and give people tools and skills. But my processes are very much about the individual's body and how they're relating to themselves and to others in space. And I'm really interested in the knowledge that people already have in their body, and the histories and the modalities that are already there, whether that comes from more like traditional like folkloric dances, or whether they're tapping into their martial arts, or whether it's like task-based, even like, oh yeah, I do this, I go on long walks, like, or I like to climb trees, or like what is already in the body that we have access to, that we can tap into to help make connections and to also feed into our learning processes, versus being like, you should look like this, you should be doing it this way, well, I do it this way, can you do it a little bit more like me? That has never been my interest. I have been interested in like what I can learn from somebody and pathways that people can activate in me, and just like the connection of shared movement together is really valuable. But I love the individuality that people bring into a space, and I never quash that. I want to enrich that. I want to encourage that. That's really the most important thing for me, I think, in relationship to dance, is what can we learn from each other, and how can we use what we've already learned to facilitate deepening of our growth as movers and as communicators. One of the things that I really love doing is like the contact improvisation and partnering work is for me such an amazing tool for really understanding my body, and also being able to listen and connect to another person's body, or perhaps a structure in a space, or be in conversation with architecture and history, being able to like connect to the center of a thing or a human, and really moving from a place of listening, and also asking for communication. Like, here I am making an offering. I'm inviting you to join me perhaps in this movement that moves to the left, or I'm inviting you to be lifted by me, or I'm inviting you to lift me. It's a series of like invitations of offerings, and never like, this is what you should be doing. Lift me now. Be lifted by me now. That deep listening, whether it's with something that's inanimate or living, is so valuable to me as a mover, and also just like as a human.
That's factual, because the one and only time I've shared physical space with you was in the last BIPOC Contact Improv Jam. As I mentioned earlier, you were dancing with Olivia Trevino, who I believe is one of the co-organizers of the jam, the BIPOC Jam.
Yeah.
And I just remember seeing y'all moving together, and the comfort and ease was stunning. Like y'all reminded me of two butterflies, just like flying around and like dancing in a meadow. And it was so delightful to watch and experience as like a witnesser of it. And it wasn't choreographed, obviously, it was improvisational, but there was just such a like fluidity to it. I understand that you're talking about deep listening and consent and offering invitation and taking on invitation. What would you say, or how would one like develop that? If you're speaking now to folks who are listening to this and they're like, wow, that sounds amazing. What would you encourage them to practice even today that would facilitate for some of this deep listening that you're talking about?
Yeah. Like literally today, I feel like anybody in whatever space they're in, whether that's like they're driving in their car or they're sitting at their computer desk typing and also listening to like this podcast at the same time. We all have environments to interact with. We're not just like floating in empty space. There's always something to interact with physically. Just really noticing where you are in space, seeing with your eyes, but also like taking opportunities to like touch and feel and maybe like send a little bit of your own energy into that object, whether it's like deepening into your chair or like touching, you know, like your desk and like seeing like if I pull on my desk a little bit, how does that make my body move? Or if I push into my desk a little bit, how does that make me move? Or if like in your car and you're like pulling on your steering wheel, like finding like how that's like rippling through the body, even like really specific intention into like one thing or one part of the body, how like everything is connected. Like my hands are touching my computer. If I press it into my computer, I can send that energy through my whole body. Like I press computer, I'm feeling it in my spine, I'm feeling it ripple through my head, I'm feeling it in my feet in the ground. I feel like is a really accessible way for anybody to just start connecting with the environment around them. Going out into nature and doing that same thing is really valuable. Every object in space has different things to offer and different things that it inspires. Like I have a soft couch behind me. Like if I were to go and interact with that, it would be very different than the way I was just interacting with my desk. Or if I'm going outside and I see like a delicate flower and I start touching it, like it's going to respond very differently than like a big burly tree. And I feel like it's kind of metaphor or simile or whatever to life in interaction with human beings. Like every human being you're going to interact with is going to be different. They're going to have different histories, different experiences, different reactions to sharing space with you, to what you're going to say, or also you're going to be reacting differently to each human that you come into contact with, or whether that's physically or just like sharing space. I feel like objects or non-human things are also like a great way to practice that listening in the body. And then as for like deepening in terms of like dance practice, like classes and workshops are always a really wonderful way to dive in and deepen and learn and get tools to continue adding to your kit of movement and how you can be in space and how you can be in the world. We've both talked a bit about like jam spaces, like contact improvisation. The Finnish Hall in Berkeley is a great resource. There are Tuesday and Thursday jams with classes before each. There's the BIPOC jam on Fridays, every first and third Friday. So those are great places to like enter in or deepen your practice and really start sharing space and community with people.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that just degree of intentionality and mindfulness that comes with like noticing how our bodies are interacting with everything around us, whether it be the chair or the computer or the desk or right. And like how it like soothes the system if we're swaying or like helps us be more present or whatever. Yeah, that is really beautiful. And to be noticing like what your body is doing when you're clicking on the keys on your keyboard, as you mentioned, is there's such an intimacy to it, like an into me, I see, I pay attention, I notice.
Mm-hmm.
And then to be listening to someone else, whether it be, a tree or a human, that also is such an intimacy. And I'd love for you to share whatever comes to mind around how you've cultivated your own intimacy through dance and what that means to you in the realm of dance and that intersection.
Mm. As I've mentioned, I've been practicing various forms of dance over the course of my lifetime. I feel like my primary practices right now are kind of like the site specific work, this contact improvisation and partnering work. I also do a lot of aerial work and then like modern contemporary dance. And when it comes to like intimacy, there's so many degrees of intimacy. There's like individual, personal, internal intimacy, the ability to get to know oneself, and then also the self in relationship to space and people and place, and histories. In my rehearsal processes, really getting to know each person I'm working with is almost more important than, oh, not almost, it is more important than the final product. Like it can take like 100 hours to make a dance. We're spending like 100 like hours together making a thing together, and it's going to all accumulate into this 1 hour performance that maybe some people will see. So really, first and foremost, prioritizing creating relationships that are really full of respect and generosity and gratitude, really taking that time to build trust and getting to know each individual is so important. Tapping into like the interests of each person that I'm working with, what they specialize in, and also what they're excited about growing into. Like I really like to invite all the modalities of a person and what they're expert in, and allow them to really showcase that and deepen that. But also, like, if someone's super jazzed about something they're not expert in, like I want to like follow that. I want to light that flame. I want to like I want it to like flourish. I want to water the seeds of excitement, and I provide, even in my professional settings where I'm like paying people, like I will pay you to learn. Like I want you, if you're excited about doing contact improvisation and that's not within your skill set, and I've invited you to be a part of this process because I love you and I'm interested in you as an individual, like I will happily spend time exploring and discovering and sharing knowledge versus expecting you to just be awesome at it already. Building intimacy in terms and trust and like kind of more horizontal creative processes where everybody's learning from each other, everybody's expert at something, everybody's still growing in other ways, and acknowledging all of that and being excited about all of that is really important to me. It's bringing some equilibrium in terms of like how much people are giving and taking and offering and receiving, like really making all of it like an invitation versus like an expectation. Also just inviting people to just be who they are. Like I don't know how many classes or workshops or rehearsal processes I have been a part of, where people are like, leave your stuff at the door. Like you are here to like take in like what I have to offer to you. Don't bring in any of your baggage. Like I'm not about that. Like bring in your experiences, bring in who you are. I'm all for that.
Yeah,
Obviously within the realm of safety and
right.
yeah,
Safety
yeah.
and consent and like yes to the invitations. But I found that to be a through line in what I've heard you say today, that it is meeting the individual where they're at with their histories, with their body, with their interests, with their passion, with their
Mhm.
willingness. When you said something along the same lines earlier around how each person comes with their different like somatic modalities, whether it be a
Mhm.
walk or martial arts or yoga or whatever it is. I thought about how when I'm like free flowing dancing and I feel open to that, I often do take like certain like hand movements that are very like folksy Indian based on my background,
Mm.
even though
Mhm.
I never want to go back to that again. Like my body just holds those memories, and it's also part of my ancestral lineage and my identity.
Mhm.
So in relation to the intimacy of exploring identity, you have an upcoming show coming up called Gathering Pieces of Peace. Can you share more about the show and what inspired it?
Gathering Pieces of Peace is an evening length work about mixed race Asian American experiences. All of the dance performers that I'm collaborating with identify as mixed folks of Asian descent, as well as the musicians that I'm collaborating with. It feels like I've been subconsciously working towards this project like my whole life. Like just the themes of it, I was born with these themes. This like as a mixed race Chinese Irish person, like all the experiences that I've had like living are kind of like informing and like really igniting this project. All these questions like throughout my lifetime of like, what are you? Like who, like what is your cultural background? Like where are you from? Like all those question marks that I've had to like kind of answer like constantly time and time again condensed into this project. Um and also like being Chinese, not really looking Chinese, being white, not really looking white, like all of those little that weird like liminal space of like not being quite enough of either. I feel like I'm enough. I don't think I've ever had the question of not being enough, but like really being able to like fully connect entirely with someone. I don't know if that's possible for anybody, even if you aren't like mixed,
Right.
but having both of these experiences in my body, but also feeling like not expert in any of it. There's just all of these questions and that are always kind of inside of me bubbling up, bringing folks together with very different experiences, but also having those commonalities because it's not a monolith. Just because you're mixed Asian doesn't mean we all have the same experiences with that. Having those moments of conversation and storytelling and experience sharing and being like, oh yes, I've had a similar experience, or like, oh, I'm curious about how you experience that. I haven't experienced it in that way. This process with these dancers has been really enriching and kind of cathartic in a way. There have been moments of like, a little bit of tears and a lot of moments of joy and a lot of laughter. There is this through line in the work of like how we mark the identity, how we choose to express ourselves in the world. And one of the commonalities is this theme of tattoos. Um, the actual title of the piece, the original, I did like a 27-minute version of it last year. Called Piece of Peace, and then this is the evening length work Gathering Pieces of Peace. It actually comes from a tattoo that I have on my back. My freshman year of high school was in this art class, and I like made this stamp of like a lotus flower and then like dragonflies. And I told myself that like when I turn 18, I'm gonna get a tattoo if I still love this thing I made. It's like I'll think about it for 4 years, and then if I still love it, I'll do it. And 4 years later, I got the tattoo, and I was 18 at the time, and I was like, what would be really like really clever of me? It's like since I'm only half Chinese, I'll put the only the first symbol of peace on my back because traditionally like the characters for peace are two characters, and the first character, huh, by itself can mean peace, but it can also mean like and or with or some. And so I was like, oh, I'm only half Chinese. I'm only going to do that first Chinese symbol for peace. And I thought that was really clever and speaking towards who I am and my experiences. I was like really excited about it in high school when I got it, and I was like really proud of it. And I was like all these opportunities I had to share it. I was like, yes. And then I went, and that part of that was also that like I didn't actually have that many Chinese people around me who spoke Chinese or read Chinese. I don't speak or read Chinese. I wish I did. I tried learning from my grandparents and they're like, "No, it's okay. You're American. Let's speak English." When I went to college at UC Berkeley, I was suddenly surrounded by a lot of people who read and or speak Chinese. And I got really kind of self-conscious about it and wanted to like started covering it up a bit more because I didn't want to have to explain to someone who actually like, spoke or read the language why I did that. Like having someone come up to me and be like, hey, why do you have the symbol for and on your back? And then having to explain like, well, actually, I'm half Chinese and I made this as a really deliberate decision of like being half. And I started covering it. And then I've thought about adding the second symbol. I still think about adding the second symbol, but I also like I'm kind of attached to this story of like a decision I made, a commitment to it, its trueness in my as a representation of my experiences as a mixed person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a gesture of like reclamation or choice. Like I'm choosing to acknowledge that I'm half or, part Chinese. And I also understand the Pieces of Peace title now.
Yeah.
It's
It's
really
yeah, a piece of the word peace. Yeah.
uh-huh. Right, right. That's really
Yeah.
sweet. This experience of liminality between multiple worlds is so relatable. Like, although we all have different content to that experience, like in essence, like I can relate. So many people I know listening to this can relate. Me identify as a third culture kid, having ancestors from South Asia, from India, but being born in South Africa during apartheid and then migrating here. Like I was at an artist retreat recently and felt really joyful and grateful to be there, and then found myself really between two worlds because it was a group of many folks who felt like the liberation of just being naked together at the lake swimming, like living their best free lives. And I love that in theory. Like I really feel in proximity to it. And then I come home where I'm living with my South Asian parents, and that idea just seems so far away. It's like, whoa, I feel I'm being pulled in two different directions that are like
Mhm.
different when it comes to relationship to the body, to sexuality, to freedom, to expression.
Mhm.
And that happens all the time. That happens all the time. So I think this exploration of pieces of us or fractures of us or fragments of us, such a beautiful and necessary way of channeling your creativity.
I was just resonating with what you're saying is like this project is specific for like we were creating it from a place of collecting people of mixed Asian American descent. But there are so many ways that all humans are a collection of all these different experiences and histories and cultures and experiences that even if you aren't like mixed race, like there's so many we're just a mix of all these different things. I like to imagine, I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but I like to imagine that all humans are constantly like having conversations within themselves about the various things that like make up who they are. And there's moments of contradiction, there's moments of hypocrisy, there's moments of deeper understanding because of mixed perspectives and experiences. Like there's all of these different ways that people um can connect, I feel like, to this work, and also through the exploration of this work how the people that are collaborating together, um we just want to name real quick, like Melissa Lewis Wong, Malia Hatiko Byrne, and Clarissa Rivera Dias. Not only are we like sharing our stories out so for understanding and connection, but also like so that we can better understand ourselves and also our communities and the experiences around us in terms of like identity exploration and identity marking. Like I feel like every human has their different ways of expressing themselves and marking their identity, whether that is like not everybody has tattoos. Like for us, this is a common thread that we found, the commonality of marking ourselves with tattoos to express our identities. But there's so many different ways, a haircut, what we're wearing, how we move through space, piercings, our skincare routine, I think that this work is like an invitation to kind of think more intentionally about these choices that we're making when we are in space, when we are present, when we're being seen.
Beautiful. Well, Megan, is there anything else you want to share for now, knowing that The links to your show, to your website, and anything else that you provide to me will be in the show notes for folks to check out and learn more about. Is there anything else you want to add for now?
Moving the body is such an important thing to do. Like, we're always constantly moving the body, but finding ways of expression and creation via moving the body is really a valuable tool that I feel like sometimes is something we don't always think about that we have access to. Like, oh, I'm not a dancer. Like,
Right.
anybody can dance in whatever way they choose to dance, to move, to be, and moving the body through space. Like, at all points of time, there is access to movement and all different abilities of moving. Just tapping into that and where you're at. We've talked a little bit about like contact improvisation and just being able to come into contact with other humans. I feel like in a lot of I won't speak on behalf of like American cultures that I have been immersed in. Like, touch is kind of a little bit taboo, like coming into contact with other people, but like intentionally like going into spaces where that consent is cultivated and where there's opportunities to come into contact with other people and to share weight and build trust and like this mutual support system of like, I'm supporting you, you're supporting me, we're listening to each other, we're responsible for our own experiences, but we're also inviting people into having a shared experience. That listening and that ability to respond and be surprised and find joy in those moments of surprise and kind of be ready for anything in a given moment, I feel like is a great practice for also the surprises that come into life and, you know, moving gracefully through those surprise moments. Oh my gosh, there's just so much.
There's so much.
Hey.
Right. I know, just based on what you said, I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much there about like touch and how we look at touch in this culture and how
Yeah.
sexualized or like thought about as something else. But as someone who's new to contact improv, what I've loved so much about it is that it taps into a very like primal need for me. And that's just contact. That's not like made any meaning, but really just like letting the body be in touch, which feels so childlike to me, like prepubescent vibes for me. Because ever since, you know, being in a body that's gone through puberty, it's been a very different experience, as I imagine, for many people, especially femme identified bodies, but probably everybody. So there's a lot there. And we'll begin to close knowing that there's so much more. So I really invite listeners for y'all to learn more about Megan and Megan's movement and folks that she's collaborating with, to check out Gathering Pieces of Peace.
Yes, I would love to share this work with people and hear conversations about what it inspires. And yes, it'd be wonderful to see you all there.
Thanks so much for your sharing and wisdom, Megan.
Thank you. It was so great to have a conversation with you and be invited to this really wonderful podcast. I've been enjoying listening, and to be a part of it is really meaningful. So thank you for providing the space and the enthusiasm and the support for creative journeys and all the different forms that those journeys can take.